what book is this on your list of books now? Knitting Outside the Swatch. How many is this for you now?
This will be my sixth book published with Interweave Press.
Oh my gosh. In total, how many books now?
I'm working on books 7 and 8 right now.
Oh my
I have
goodness.
yarn. I have yarn swarming around me for books 7 and 8. One of them's crochet and one of them's knitting.
Well, we appreciate that you're an equal opportunity author.
Yeah, 50-50 to be honest with you. I ever since I started knitting and crocheting, taught myself both when I was pregnant within a month of each other. I picked up crochet first and then picked up knitting within a month. And when I started designing, I even threw out a proposal in both from the beginning and just thought, whoever says yes first will be a sign that that's the direction I should go in. And it turns out both were accepted right away. So my first two jobs back to back were one knitting and one crochet. And I've been doing 50-50 almost ever since.
That,
And this coming March will be 10 years that I've been in business.
oh my goodness. Well, and I think,
Mm-hmm.
for me, my first exposure to your work was crochet because of the TV show, right?
Mm-hmm.
For knitting, was it
Yep.
Knitting Daily, right?
Yes.
Yes, and you took over as the crochet expert on
Right?
Knitting Daily, which which I think was a lot of people's first exposure, and I was always in trance. Although I know how to crochet and I'm a self taught crocheter, I don't crochet a lot, and I think probably the reason is because I am self taught and I find it much harder on my hands, but probably because I'm sure the way I hold the hook in the yarn, I find
Well,
knitting
and if you're
easier for me.
new, when you're new, you're a little more stressed than you will be when you get used to it. So just like with knitting, remember how tight your tension was when you first started? It's because when
Mm.
you're unfamiliar with something, you're tense, and when you're tense, you're holding tighter, whether it's the one hand or the two. And until you get the experience to relax and to know, and it's not the beginning, you're going to be too tight, and that's I think what gives you the pain.
Oh, yeah, and I think I probably because I'm paying so much more attention to it. Because I think when I knit,
Right,
I'm not even looking. I'm just my hands are
right.
doing it, and my brain doesn't even have to pay so much attention. But when I crochet, I know that I'm looking and I'm really yeah, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? I never really thought about that. I think yeah, so maybe I just need to get to the point where it flows as easily for me as knitting does.
I remember on my first knitting project, my tension was so tight that I was like beating sweat
Oh
trying to get
no.
my needle into the stitch on
Oh
the
no.
opposite needle. And it's like I almost ripped the yarn just trying to stab it into the stitch. So I mean, that just comes from being stressed because you're holding too tight. So I mean, the best thing to do is to walk away, calm down, and go back when you're a little more relaxed.
I think a lot of people listening probably relate to that, and a lot of people who teach relate to that because yeah I've been there and I've seen it on more than one
Hmm.
occasion, which is it's just a little scary, and God help you that you're trying to use acrylic yarn or something that doesn't stretch a lot when you're doing that. But yeah, Mary
Yes, yeah.
Mary says, "Oh yes." She definitely gets it. We've all been there when we're first learning. So
Definitely.
yeah, so yeah, and I always loved watching those crochet sections in Knitting Daily, despite the fact that I wasn't crocheting, because I was always just fascinated by how quickly your hands were moving and the fact that you never looked down, that you were always looking at the camera and your hands were doing like crazy things. So it was really it was hypnotic to watch those sections, and it made me want to be able to do that. So I don't maybe that will be my 2014. Now that you've inspired me for 2014, that maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution is to
Good. Yeah. It doesn't
is to
hurt to
spend
learn
that time.
a new trick, right?
Yeah, but you I was excited when I saw that you were doing this new book because I love the motifs in crochet, and I was like, oh, but then I really have to learn really have to learn how to do motifs in crochet. And I thought, oh, when I saw this book, it's like, oh, now I could do them with my knitting needles. So this actually kind of allows me to cheat on that particular New Year's resolution. But so this was really an interesting concept. And I know last year I think you had another book that came out that was kind of taking a lot of the work that you had done in crochet and kind of translating that into knitting techniques. And I love the fact that you took the what I think a lot of people think of as kind of classic crochet, which is the motif crochet, and created a version of it that you can do on 2 needles for knitters, because I think most people love that look, and it's so on trend fashion-wise now. I think it's just one of those things that's never gonna go out of style, and did it for knitters. So thanks for that. Really appreciate it.
Sure. I was inspired by not only crochet, but some of the other textile things that I really am inspired by. And some of it's like the geometric texturing of different quilting arts, and even Moroccan tile work is something that I study a lot, because what's so interesting to me is that there's a central motif inside the tile, but then there's another little partial motif in the corners, so that when the tiles line up together, they create another motif in the corners. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
something that really inspires me in motif work, whether it's crochet or knitting. So I tried to find inspiration from all of those other crafts to come up with this, because I thought knitting was one of the only places where I haven't really seen a whole lot of motif work. And I really wanted to explore doing something like that in only knitting, because like you could make something in knitting and add crochet to it or add sewing to it, but I wanted it to be completely just on knitting needles and see how far I could go with it. And when you first start exploring something, it could be a total bust and go in the garbage can, and I'm not saying some of them didn't, because when you try to come up with new concepts, it doesn't always work, but a lot of them did work, thank goodness. And so I was able to come up with a book with a reference section of many motifs, and then took a couple of them, or a few of them, to make patterns, and then organized it by chapter so that you could even mix and match the different construction style of motifs to mix and match them within the projects.
Yeah,
And
and
on
I
top
think
of
that's
that,
what's
I tried to
really
come up. Mhm.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead. I wanted to make the motifs in different construction styles to work with people of different skill sets. Like, for example, somebody who's brand new to knitting is not going to want to do circular motifs on double points starting from 4 stitches, right? So working in the round, some of them, like the picture, like the hat on the cover, is done that way. And if you're a sock knitter, or if you're familiar with DPNs, double pointed needles, it's not hard to do at all. But I also made some of the motifs where they look like they're worked in the round, but they're worked on straight needles back and forth in rows, either in short rows or in some really unusual, super simple techniques, so that anybody at any skill level could make motifs.
Well, and for those of us who are really um, aren't crazy about working on double pointed needles because they make us nervous. I mean, for those that start on the 4 stitches, we could still work those in the round on 2 circular needles, though, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yep, definitely.
yeah. That's my preferred method, because I just don't like to keep track of that many needles. It's just too much math too for me.
I
So
like it sometimes, but I work in knitting and crochet all day long. So for me, it's just fun to change things up. So for me, sometimes I like doing the magic loop where you pull part of the circulars
mm.
out and work in small bits, or using 2 circulars, especially when you have a lot of stitches on your needles. And sometimes DPNs are just, I don't know, just to change it up for me. I like variety.
Yeah, I just don't like all those little. I don't like all those, and I don't like all those little dangly needles. It makes me a little
As
cray.
long as your tension is tight, it's not difficult. If you're using a slippery yarn, it can be very difficult though, because then they'll slide out
Yeah, that's
But
a little
I've been on a
nerve-wracking.
project recently with DPNs, and the yarn is has some texture to it, and the needles are bamboo,
Yeah.
and they're not going anywhere. And there's something kind of fun and alien-like about working on these DPNs with lots of stitches. It looks kind of cool, and it definitely gets a lot of attention when I do it in a cafe, because then people really don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
People can guess knitting and crochet sometimes, but on DPNs, most of the time people just wonder what the heck I'm doing.
Well, let's take a peek at the book. And I know there's 40 motifs in here and 10 projects that kind of illustrate the different forms in the book of the motifs. And that's what I pulled out. I pulled out the projects. So, and then we can talk about how they utilize the motifs. Okay. So I think people probably want to see the book, see the projects in the book, and how they're most likely going to be using the um, let's see. Let's see if this will start. It will. Isn't that nice? I always like it when it works. This is really lovely. So tell us about this project. Oh, who said it was too early for wine? It's not too early for wine. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. So tell us about this project, Kristin. Kristin? Hello? Did we lose Kristin? Oops. I think we did. I think she's just coming back in. I think she must have lost her internet connection. So I think that means it's time to grab a glass of wine, right? Or coffee. That's what I'm drinking. It's too cold for wine right now, at least where I am. So we'll just hang tight for a minute and wait for Kristin to come back in. Oh, there she is. Oh, Kristin, hang on. Let me unmute you. Hey, Kristin.
Yeah, I was trying to get your attention to tell you that it was on your end, I think, because I couldn't, every time I clicked the button, it wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, that was so weird. I lost yeah, we somehow lost your audio. That was really weird. Okay.
Yeah, and I couldn't do anything on this end.
Yep, I got you now though. Because I thought you were
Okay.
coming in. I thought I saw somebody arriving, and then I just saw you're already
Mm-hmm.
in there. But now we're good. So,
Okay.
so Kristen, tell us about this gorgeous piece. I love this.
Thank you. This is one of the examples of working motifs in rows, not rounds. And as you're binding off one square, you're casting on for the next square. And this project, as well as all the projects in the book, I join the motifs to the projects and join them to each other without sewing. So there's different techniques in the book, but some of them are involving slip stitches and knitting two together with a live stitch and an existing stitch. But there's all kinds of ways that you can join things in knitting without having to sew. And these techniques are things that you can apply to all of your knitting. There are so many applications for something like that that you can use in any other project as well.
Which means that there aren't ends to sew in on all of these squares. Is that what you're
Absolutely not.
saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my. So unless you were gonna like change colors or something.
But how about using a self-striping yarn that changes
Oh my
color for
gosh.
you? I mean,
Yeah.
how awesome would that be too? I mean, that's the beauty of projects like this where you don't have to cut the yarn and sew it in, is that you can either do it in one color and it'll be gorgeous with no ends to weave in, or do it in something with a long self-striping color, and people will think you went to all the trouble of sewing everything together, but you didn't.
Yeah, this even in a like a hand dyed in a single color, but it's kind of gradient. This would, I mean,
Hmm.
just
This picture doesn't show it
gorgeous.
that well, but this is one of those. This is a yarn that changes color just slightly because it's hand dyed, and in
Oh,
person it shows the color a little bit better. But one of my favorite yarns and colorways. I love it.
Yeah, and the color is gorgeous. Mary says this would be so much fun to work, and I agree. This is really lovely, and I have a
Just
sneaky.
different, just totally different than than anything you've seen. That's, I mean, I like the fact that people just really wouldn't understand how you made it.
Yeah, I think my sister would really love this, and I have just this week decided I am going to make Christmas gifts, so I really need to get going. So
Hmm.
and I think this one probably isn't gonna wouldn't take me too long, huh?
Nope, it's a Mobius in the center, but it's pretty narrow, so it doesn't take too long to knit. And then the edging is just the little squares that you join as you go. I think it's just a few balls of yarn, so I mean, it's just probably three to 400 yards of yarn, not a whole lot. So it wouldn't, and I got an 8 needle, so it would go pretty quick.
Yeah, so a couple of snow days and I'm good to go.
Hmm.
Okay. Alrighty then. Well, this is really, really pretty. Oh, don't
Thank you.
beep at me. And I love that the back of this is made partially of these motifs. I think that, when you think of garments made with motifs, I tend to think of like the because I was born in the 50s. I think of the granny square vests that were
Hmm.
so popular in the late 60s. And this is so lovely and modern and light and fluffy. And I really want to just touch this,
It's a
which,
brushed alpaca yarn, which
oh,
is just really, really lovely to work with. This is an example of motifs that are worked in rows, not rounds, and joined after you make the strip and then join it together instead of working from the center out. So this is one of the more beginner projects in the book. And then after you join the motifs together, you pick up a round and just do the large ribbing to make the outside part of the vest and the sleeve holes.
so gorgeous and feminine. And this color is really spectacular. Whose yarn is this? This is really
It's
pretty.
alpaca yarn. It's Alpaca Yarn Company's Halo, which is a brushed alpaca lace weight that's already wound into a ball so you don't have to wind it, which is something that I always like to find in lace weight yarns, especially a brushed lace weight, because it's really easy to tangle up on itself otherwise, especially when you're winding it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this one comes 500 yards to a ball that's
Oh,
already
nice.
wound. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, Moosker says it looks like sea glass, and I agree that
Yes,
color
it
is just
does.
really,
Hmm.
really beautiful, really beautiful. So, and here's the cover hat, and this does really look like crocheted motifs that have been crocheted together. How is this
Hmm.
constructed?
Okay, the circular medallion portion is done on double points, working your way out in a circle. And then I came up with this technique for making the shells on the outside, kind of like, you know how when you're going to do a knit cast on, how you insert your needle into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and put it on your needle?
Yeah.
Well, instead of doing that, as you knit that next stitch through the previous stitch, you drop that original stitch off and leave the next stitch on your hook. So you're making a chain with your knitting needles.
Oh.
And then as you're doing that, when you're going to join to a shell on the opposite motif, you're going to slip stitch into it and then pass it over.
Oh my
So it's a
goodness.
combination of knitting techniques to create shells and then join them together as well, but still with knitting techniques on knitting needles.
Yeah, because it definitely looks like a chain, like a crochet chain.
Hmm. Yep.
Oh, how clever.
And it was just one of those things I thought, if it'll work, awesome. If it won't, it goes in the garbage. And it works. So
Thank goodness. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because when I was looking at it, it was like, well, did she crochet these together?
Oh
How did
yeah.
she do that? Yeah.
Nobody believes me that it's knitted and on knitting needles. They're like, oh come on. I'm like, yes, it is. You have to read the pattern. You'll see.
Yeah, because I mean, even on the cover where it's kind of blown up, it
Mm-hmm.
looks just like a crochet chain.
Yeah, so
So,
if you like that look, but you don't know how to crochet, I mean, that's awesome.
wow, that's crazy. So now, what construction technique did you use on this?
This is just done in rows as well. I did a picot cast on for the outer edge of these half circles and then worked my way up in decreases to make these half circles. And I did it for earrings at first, and they make super cute earrings,
Oh.
but my editor didn't like it as earrings, so I went back and did it as a scalloped edging for a shawlette, which I think is great too. And I just originally I wanted to do earrings, and I still have the earrings, and I love them. But
Oh, I think
and
they'd
I
be
did it.
cool as earrings.
Well, I bought those the hoops, the solid hoop that goes through your ear and makes a continuous loop.
Yeah.
And I strung the top curled edge of that crescent right onto the ring, so they sit sideways in your ears with sequin yarn. So they're super cute. But this one also has beaded yarn for the edging, the medallion or the crescents, or sorry, scallops, and then the top portion of the shawl is done just in a complementary yarn that doesn't have beads. And then to match the picot cast on for the edging pieces, the motifs, I did a picot bind off on the top of the shawlette so it all matched.
Oh, are those is there a picture of those earrings on your website? I want to see them.
No, I'd have to, I don't even know where they are because I think they're still packed from my last move, which isn't that recent, but you know how that goes. Some things
Yeah,
don't
we
get
all know how
unpacked.
that one goes. But you
Yeah,
should dig them out because I,
I
I
will.
we all want to see them.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did those on like 1 millimeter knitting needles and really tiny sequin yarn, and they turned out cute.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I want to see them. So, yeah, because I can picture that. And it would awesome. So tell us about this shawl. I love these pieces that hang from it.
Yeah, I did square motifs done in rows with a beautiful diamond shaped lace motif in the center of them. Did them all separately and then picked up the top edge of all of them to create the shawl and work the shawl up in decreases. And I just thought we always see rounded stuff on the edge of shawls, that I just thought I might be fun to try to do a square motif flowing on the edge of the shawl. And I blocked it so that it had multiple points. Like instead of blocking it perfectly with square lines, I on purpose did like a scallop for the square. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so pretty.
Thank you. It's a hand dyed yarn by Fiesta Yarn that's really pretty too. I love the colorway. I
Yeah,
think it's called
it,
Aruba.
yeah, I was gonna say it's very oceany.
Hmm.
It's very oceany. Though I think because you live near the beach in Florida, and
Hmm.
I see a lot of that kind of sort of tropical ocean colorways in your work. I think that you find a lot of inspiration in that in where
Yeah,
you
bright
live, right?
bright flowers, like bright colored flowers, like the fuchsias and the oranges. I like those. And otherwise, it's all blues and greens for the water.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're all inspired by the world around us. There's no getting away from that, right? So,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, this is a beautiful colorway in this yarn. So,
Thank you.
Fiesta makes such lovely yarns. So this is beautiful, and this shade is really
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
So, tell us about this.
Okay. I did this. It's three different yarns by Filatura de Crosa by Taki Stacy Charles, and I picked them all in a similar colorway, but there's three different types of yarn. So like the base of the scarf is Zarina, which is a superwash wool, and I did a simple brioche scarf. And the reason why I did that is because when you think about brioche stitch, it gives you these great raised spines of one row of stockinette looking stitch, right? So you have these perfectly placed V's, which in my mind makes me think a perfect place to evenly pick up stitches for something else, right? There's no, it's kind of foolproof. You can see exactly where you need to pick up your stitches, which can often be very difficult to figure out in a three-dimensional picking up and knitting on something. So I created it in brioche stitch so that I could pick up and knit into it. And what I did was I alternated between rows of Superior, which is a brushed
Oh,
cashmere
I
and
love
silk,
that
and
yarn.
a Nirvana, which is a lace weight merino wool. And although it looks like lots and lots of petals that you would have to weave in lots of ends, every single row is one continuous piece of yarn. And what I do is go back and forth in short rows to create the petal and then go on and do the next one. So that you're just you can, and so think about using that for a lace shawl edging, or for cuffs on a sweater, or the edging on a skirt, or even an afghan. It's a technique that you could use in so many different ways. But to really go hog wild crazy with it, I decided to do a three-dimensional um, pattern on the top surface of this scarf, and it just looks like a giant flower around her neck. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And, the only way that I've ever done this with knitting is to knit all those petals individually, leaving them on the needle, and then
Right?
knit all the way across, and then weave in two ends on every single petal, the starting end and the end where I
Mm-hmm.
cut them. And if you did 50 petals, you got 100 ends to weave in.
Oh, and this is way more than
Oh
50.
my God, this
This
is
is
like
probably
hundreds of
150.
petals.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, how beautiful. And
Yeah,
not,
so it's fun to do, and it's really satisfying to look at when you're done and know that you don't have to weave in all those ends.
yeah, isn't that nice?
Hmm.
Yeah, we can all appreciate the whole not weaving in the ends, especially on something like this where you would, oh God, I don't even want to think about the ends on that one. And this is another beautiful example of using motifs in a garment. So tell us about
Thank
this
you.
pullover.
This one is done in strips. So doing the motifs, you're working from sleeve to sleeve, sideways. And what I wanted to do was, this was an example of trying to be inspired by the Moroccan tile work that I was explaining to you earlier, where you have a central motif, and by adding a little bit to the corners, when they join to other motifs, you end up having a secondary motif. And so what I did on this one is I did working in rows. I start small and work out as a diamond, and then come back in, and then start my next diamond out like that and coming back in. But when you're halfway through the increases up to the corner, and when you're halfway through the decreases down to the next corner, I cast on and bound off little strips. And then when you go to join the next strip of motifs, those little strips are joined to the other strips on the other length, and then the motifs themselves are joined in the corner, and it creates this secondary X motif in between the diamonds. And then, as a funny play on words, I called it argyle lace, because I didn't expect it to look like argyle when I was done, but it kind of looks like
Mm.
argo sorry, I can't say the word now, argyle, with the negative space looking like instead of color work. So it was just, I think this would be a beautiful afghan or a beautiful shawl on its own, or even a scarf, but I decided to make it into a sweater and have a band that ties at the hips on the side.
Yeah, I mean, it's just surprising, and it's like Elke said, it's such interesting construction. And when you look at this, you just wouldn't believe that that top part is knitted because
Well, not only knitted, but knitted without ends to weave in. Whether it's crocheted or knitted or whatever it is, you wouldn't expect it to have no ends to weave in.
yeah, I mean, it's just yeah, it's crazy, but crazy in a good way. It's like crazy
This
good.
is This is one of those yarns that's hand dyed, but hand dyed where it's just subtle shading. This is Drew Emborski's Sarcastic, which is a cotton blend yarn. And what I find really interesting about this yarn is whether I knit or crochet with it, it's 50-50 Pima cotton and tencel. It doesn't kill my hands like a lot of cotton yarn does.
Yeah.
Cotton's one of the hardest things for me to work with, and this yarn is soft when I'm knitting with it, let alone in the finished project. And it has that beautiful soft shading within its color. I like it a lot.
And leave it to Drew
It's
and
really
Borsky to
soft.
name his yarn Sarcastic.
Yes.
Only Drew. So,
Yes.
this is stunning. So,
Thank you.
tell us about this Fiola flower shawl.
This is Trendsetter Yarns Tonalita, which is an acrylic blend, acrylic and wool blend yarn that comes wound already in balls, but comes in the most beautiful long self-striping colorways. And I thought it would be really interesting to do motifs with a self-striping colorway so that it looks so much more complicated than it really is. And this is another example of motifs that are done in rows, not rounds. And so even though it looks like it's worked from the center out, it's worked sideways and joined with one little tiny bit at the very end. And as you're knitting the flowers, you are joining the petals to the petals of the next flower as you go. So there's no sewing whatsoever. And
Wow.
then after all of the flowers are joined together, the edging is done perpendicularly in rows and joined to the flowers and worked around the whole border as you go.
Crazy.
So it's a
Okay.
lot simpler than it
I
looks.
mean, it
It
does. It
looks a
looks
lot more
very
complicated
it
than it
does. It
is.
looks very
Yeah, it's not.
complicated.
I mean, it's garter stitch base, so there's not even a
Oh,
purl stitch in the whole thing. And there's some drop stitches in the center of the flowers just to make them look, like elongated stitches. But it's so easy to do. It's very, very simple.
it,
Considering what it looks like, it's very, I teach this one when I teach classes at Stitches and other events, and it's something that I teach people within a couple of hours.
yeah. Roxy said it's so beautiful and yet so clever and free of ends. Yeah. And Moosker
Yep.
says,
I
I
mean,
need,
obviously the flowers, you're going to have separate ends for each one, but you're not going to have ends from sewing them together. And so it's still relatively end free.
wow. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And
Thank you.
so tell us about this, the scarf.
This one is different than the other ones in the fact that it doesn't have any negative space. And what I really wanted to do was find a way to knit squares together without having to sew them and still have a solid fabric. And so I thought, well, doing it as squares makes it too simple. So let's do rectangles just to push the envelope a little further. And so I
Oh, God
alternated,
forbid you should make it too
yeah,
simple.
I know, I know. I figure everybody can, once you learn the technique, you could apply it to squares, but I had to go one step further just to make it difficult on myself to see if it was possible. So I alternated. If you notice on there, some of them have XOX and some
I
of them
see
have
that.
OXO, and it's
Hugs
just
and
a play
kisses.
play on hugs and kisses, exactly. And you can't really tell in the picture, but it's two different colors of two different shades of yellow. So the strips going on this diagonal are a different shade than the strips going in this diagonal. And you can kind of see that the ones on the left are a little darker in shade, but in person you can really tell that very well. And so what you do is after you make your first rectangle, you're alternating between picking up and knitting into a portion of the previous one and knitting two together with your live stitch and an existing stitch on an existing motif as you go in the rows. So it's a combination of knit two together and picking up and knitting to create a completely seamless joining of squares that you could apply to anything. Once you learn that technique for this project, you could do it on any other type of project you have.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This is stunning. I want this sweater for me. You know, I keep trying to get people who come to these live events to make me something for Christmas or my birthday, which is 5 days after Christmas. Hint, hint,
Oh boy.
hint, hint, hint. And if anybody wanted to really like to make me something, this would be nice. And this color is really good for me too. Hint,
It
hint,
is a pretty
hint.
color.
Yeah. So, still waiting. Anyway, so tell us about this. This is called the Thora lace cardigan. This is just
It's a
so
combination
lovely.
of it's thank you. It's a combination of different techniques. The back is done in just a simple lace stitch and done, as a square. Then you're going to pick up and knit around it to for that a garter stitch border. The sleeves are worked in the round and garter stitch, so all really simple. And then the collar is done with strips of lace square or diamond motifs that are joined as you go, or that are made in a strip as you go and then join to the existing cardigan. And then each strip of motifs after that is joined to the previous one as you go. And with a very simple technique that you'll see in the book, like I've explained in some of the other projects, that involves knitting to an existing fabric to join it, not sewing at all.
Okay, and I know somebody will end up asking. So finished sizes for the cardigan at the bust start at 32 and a half and go to 44. And the sample that the model's wearing is the 32 and a half, and it's open at the front. So for sizing purposes, so for people who are interested. So, and I think that's the last of the designs. So that gives you that gives you something to think about there, folks, right? So let's take a look at where else we can go and keep track of the very busy, very busy, very busy oh my God, Kristen, you're everywhere. You're just everywhere. It's like you have a job or something. I looked at
Yeah.
this and I was like, "Oh man, this just looks like work to me." So here's where you can follow Kristen. First of all, you can go to styledbykristin.com, which is Kristen's website, and you can keep track of all the things that are new in Kristen's world. And Kristen, we gave away a copy of The Finer Edge during our we did a 31-day giveaway in October to celebrate. I hit 2 million YouTube views. So
Wow,
yeah,
congratulations.
my how-to videos on YouTube hit 2
That's
million
awesome.
views. Yeah, crazy, right? Because we just did
Hmm.
we hit 1 million last August. And I think it took like 3 years to get to a million, and then a year to get to 2 million. So
Oh my God. I
we
hope I get there one day.
at this pace, we might get to 3 million in July, and then, it'll just be a
Wow.
permanent giveaway. We'll just be giving stuff away every day at this pace.
Well, for
So,
those kind of numbers, I would too.
yeah. So, I will say that Interweave, your publisher, kept us well stocked for our giveaway, which was very, very, very generous of them. So,
That's
but
nice.
we did give away a copy of your book, The Finer Edge, and I will have to say that I was hard pressed to part with it when I got here. So, and
Well, I'm
also,
sure we can get you another one.
oh well, good, because it was beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I love crocheted edges. Yeah, on my knits is one of my favorite things. So, but tell us about the Rapture product that's new that just came out, right?
Well, I've had the Rapture Delicate Wash for about a year now, and that's made by Eucalan, which is an all-natural delicate wash that's no rinse. And the Rapture scent is the essential oil of night blooming jasmine.
Oh,
And this
nice.
month we're coming out. This month we're coming out with an all-new product, which is the Rapture Fragrant Balm, and it's a little tin that's all natural and vegan. It's 1 ounce, and it's good for your cuticles, it's good for your dry skin, elbows, heels, the ends of your hair, and it also is a really nice and subtle solid fragrance that you can keep in your purse, dab on your pulse points. I wear it as a perfume. I love it. And so it's travel safe, it's not considered a liquid, it's not going to spill in your purse. I'm very sensitive to artificial fragrance
Yeah,
and
me too.
synthetic fragrance, so I've been wearing essential oils for perfume for years, but they're not good for carrying in your purse or anything. So this is a great solution for me. I can carry it in my purse and just dab it on my pulse points as a solid fragrance as well, and it's all natural. And that comes out this month, and I'll be debuting it at a yarn shop in Sarasota this coming Saturday called the Good Yarn Sarasota.
Oh, that's a lovely shop too, on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Moosker was saying she hates when the yarn sticks to your hands in the winter, which I agree, and
Yes, this is
especially
great to put on your
yeah.
hands first before knitting. Absolutely.
Yeah, which I wish I had a little now because I've had the heat on because it's been so cold up here and my hands I definitely feel it when I knit that they tend to because my
Hmm.
hands get so dry from the heat being on. So if we have less of that problem and in Florida, except in the summer when we have the air conditioning cranked up. So here's where you keep track of Kristin. So you could go to Styled by Kristin, and then of course you want to make sure that you go, because everybody's on Facebook. So even old people
Mhm.
like me are on Facebook. Um, is to go over it and like, as you can see, I have liked Styled by Kristin on Facebook. So you can keep up with what's going on with Kristin and where she is and when she's got something new coming out, and get some little previews of what's happening in Kristin's world. And
And if
then,
even if
oh,
you can even friend me by my whole name on Facebook, and I usually just stick to the knitting and crochet things on my Styled by Kristen page, but I talk about all the other things that I'm interested in beyond knitting and crochet on my Kristin Omdahl page. But that's the one where you have to actually send me a friend request, but that's no problem. You can just send me a friend request if you want to follow me there as well.
oh, there you go. And then also, Kristin is on Twitter and at Kristin Omdahl, oddly enough, in case you want to look for her over there. And
Yeah,
Kristin
on all
does.
sites I use my whole name.
So yeah, so and oddly, you don't have to put numbers after your name. So not a
No,
lot of Kristin Omdahls out there. So
that's right.
yeah, I haven't had that problem either so much. And
Good.
yeah, and then also Kristin has a YouTube channel, and she does do some tutorials on YouTube. So if for
For
some of
knitting, crochet, and jewelry.
so there you go. So I think Mooskers earlier said that she needed some tutorials, and since Kristin does some really unique techniques, I guess really unique is actually not appropriate. So she does unique techniques. I know it's one of those things. My son always stops me when I do that. That and a myriad of he drives him crazy. So does has unique techniques, and demonstrates some of those for you. So yeah, so check out her channel, subscribe to her channel on YouTube, and you'll know when she's got something new coming out. And of course, a design page on Ravelry, because you'd be shocked, right, if she didn't. And then of course, you would be shocked if she didn't. And also, you can take classes at Craftsy from Kristin. And I think my local station in Florida isn't airing Knitting Daily anymore. Is it still in production?
Yes, they've changed. They've changed the whole platform. In fact, I'm no longer with the show. I
Yeah.
was on for 8 seasons, and this coming season in January will now be hosted by Vicky Howell, and they've changed their whole platform and changed everything about
Oh,
it. But it will still be called Knitting Daily TV. But I don't
oh,
know why it's not airing in your area because
I
it's
think it's
still in production.
oh, okay. Oh, okay. Because Vicky Howell had a show that used to be on DIY a long time ago, but
Mm-hmm. Yep.
okay. So now if you want to get the real info on how to do things, then from Kristin, slide on over to Craftsy and take a class. And they right now, as you can see, it looks like they're running a sale, and Craftsy runs a great sales on their classes. So
Yes, they do.
yeah, and if you're not getting email from Craftsy, you definitely want to sign up for it, because you'll get notice when they have their classes on sale. And quite a few of our guests on the party line are instructors over there. I think Mary Jane Mucklestone teaches Fair Isle. I mean, so you can
Mm-hmm.
take great classes from just experts in everything. So definitely check that out. And
And you can also go, they have a Facebook page where they run all their specials too. So if you
oh,
like their Facebook page, you can keep up with them there as well.
well, there you go. If you don't want more email, which a lot of us don't. And
I know
then
I don't.
yeah, God knows. My husband is shocked at the amount of email I get, but it's life, right? So, and
Yes,
then Pinterest, which I just love Pinterest, and I especially
me
love
too.
Pinterest in terms of following designers and magazines that and design magazines that I and craft magazines that I love. because you get a chance to see what inspires the people who inspire you. So, and Kristin is on Pinterest as herself, strangely enough. And so if you follow Kristin on Pinterest like I do, then you can check out what's inspiring Kristin these days and see what's going on over there.
Yeah,
So,
I make a point to not do anything knit or crochet on there other than my own, like my own books or stuff. Because if I'll see someone else's pinned it, then I'll put it in my little album. But for the most part, I have so much fun looking up the things that I like that I don't do. You know, like different types of art and just different types of things that aren't a part of my work world. And I find so much inspiration in looking at Pinterest and the quotes. I love the quotes on there too.
well, and then we'll see, like, for color inspiration, we see the Mediterranean, and then we see some of the color that shows up in your
Hmm.
work. So,
Right.
it's like the things that inspire us show up in other parts of our life. So it's interesting to see, how all that kind of folds into our work as well. So I
Hmm.
love that part of Pinterest, is to see how the designers who inspire me, how they're inspired and things that they really love. Because I think that all comes in, and people who are inspired by vintage couture and old movies, and how that inspires design, that how they're how you see little bits of that in their design work, and I just love that.
Yep.
So that's one of my favorite things about Pinterest. So now, of course, we're going to give away a book today, because that's the way we roll around here. So we always give away a book, and which we'll do as soon as we stop recording. But if you're not lucky enough to win a book today, you know what you're going to do, right? So first, you're going to call your local yarn store and find out whether they have it, because we're all about supporting your local yarn store, because we want them to stay in business, and we're going to give them
Definitely.
all the help we can give them. And plus, when you go there and you buy the book, then you're going to pick out your project and buy some yarn, and they're going to help you with it if you need help. But if they don't have the book, what you're going to do is you're going to just click on over to planetpearl.com, and you're going to help planetpearl.com with by clicking on the book link. And after you click on the book link, which it will of course open in just very, very quickly, as you can tell, I made the mistake of streaming a couple things this morning. So when you click on the book link, which will open very quickly for you, because you're not up in the mountains, um, is that you will see Kristin's book is right here, and you will click on the link there, and then you
There it
will
is.
click on the link that will take you to Amazon and buy the book. And we will get the tiniest little commission, but it does help pay for things like this GoToMeeting interface that helps us bring superstars like Kristin Omdahl right into your home or office, wherever you happen to be sitting at this very moment, and giving you the opportunity to win great books like Knitting Outside the Swatch. So thank you very much, Kristin, for being here today. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. You're one of our favorites here, and I'm so glad that books 7 and 8 are swirling around your house there in Florida, and because it means you'll be back, and we've got more to look forward
Wonderful. Thank
to
you.
from you. So I hope that Santa brings you lots of fabulous knitting and crochet stuff, and maybe somebody in the room will knit or crochet something for you for Christmas too, because you know
Oh, that would be nice.
it'll
I
be
never get to
nice.
keep any of my stuff. I have to ship everything off.
And
I don't have anything. I don't own a pair of knitted socks. I don't own, I think I have one hat from an old book that got sent back to me. Otherwise, I don't even own anything knit, and it's so sad.
it's shocking, really, isn't it?
I know, but
uh,
I don't have time to knit for myself. If I have time to knit and crochet, it's time for me to work. So, and I have to send things off. So it's just kind of weird that way.
it's the saddest thing I've heard today. We gotta do
Oh.
we gotta do something about that. That's just wrong. It's just wrong. I know. And when
Oh,
I
I take that back. I have blankets because my son, if he asks for anything knit or crocheted, he always asks for blankets. Of course, he'd ask for the biggest thing
Of
that takes the
course.
most amount of time. But the fact that he doesn't say, no, I don't want anything, I take as a positive. So we do have a few blankets.
All right. Yeah, but You need something for yourself. Come on.
I agree.
All right. Yeah, we'll see what we can do about that.
One of
Come
these
on,
days. One of these
people.
days.
Come on,
Yeah.
people. Send the woman a scarf.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that.
Take care, Kristen. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Don't leave the room. I'm giving out gifts.